everyone. Welcome to At Home with Sally. I'm Sally Clarkson, and I have the biggest privilege in the world to be with so many friends from all over the world who join me every week to listen to my stories, inspiration, biblical encouragement, and I am just so glad that you're here today. Thanks so much for joining me. Hello, my friends. This is Sally Clarkson, and I am so happy to welcome you to my podcast today. This is At Home with Sally and friends, and sometimes I have friends on, my children, sometimes my dog. Today, I have special guests on. I speak here, for those of you who are new, about motherhood, parenting, education, life, recipes, books, movies, and a love for God. So I hope something that I say today will encourage you. Listen. Can you hear that? You won't believe it, but we live in an area where there's a lot of woodpeckers, and this doesn't happen every year. Most years we have woodpeckers, but occasionally, I think maybe 2 or 3 times out of our last 20 years, I was sitting today in Sarah's room to have some quiet time. Sarah is my oldest daughter, who lives in England. And I was sitting here a few days ago, 3 days ago actually, and all of a sudden I hear this psh, 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 and a mother bird has built a nest inside my wall in Sarah's room. And so I have these wonderful birds, and they will sing once in a while. So if you hear the background of singing music, it is my sweet little birdies who have invaded, and it's on the second floor behind an eave that we can't get to, so we will just be companions for a while. Anyway, I know that you must be having all sorts of adventures as well. Well, today too, I always like to tell you what my week has been like. I hope your week has been great. I am a tea person in general. I love cups of tea. It has given me sanity, friendship, civility in my life, and I spend a lot of time living in Europe and in England, and so that's why I love my tea. It really does help you. And there come my birds again. But anyway, I was the other day I was making some coffee because I have tea early in the morning, then I have coffee about 10:30, and then I have tea again at least once a day, and you never know when I might have to meet someone else for coffee. So I am an equal caffeinated sort of person. But we happen to live in the mountains of Colorado, and we are surrounded by all of these lovely pine trees, and they all have different pine cones, hundreds and hundreds of pine cones. And so every year at some mysterious date, you never know when it's going to be, the pine cones pop and they spew out yellow pollen. I mean, everywhere. You can't imagine how much pollen this does. We don't always see it happening, but we see the results of it. And so it comes through closed windows into our furniture, onto our chairs, onto our deck, into my kitchen. And it just happened the other day. I was at my 10:30 point, about to make some coffee. You know, I think all writers have to have some sort of drink in their hand in order to be inspired with a good idea. So I went to my coffee maker, and even though I had the lid down on the water, the place where you put the water, it was yellow water. And at first I thought, oh my goodness, have our pipes given a lot of rust out? No, it was pollen. So I had been drinking pollen water in my little water container with my coffee. And then as I went to do the foamer, I looked down the foamer, and at the bottom of the foamer, it was all bright yellow. So the next day, the next couple of days, the next few days, I have had bits of asthma where I can hardly breathe that really deep breath. And so it is a part of, I'm sure, the fall of nature, the chaos of nature. But anyway, that's kind of been some of my week and some of the fun things that I've been doing, fun adventures that I have been living here at my house. You'll have to tell me about yours. Well, today I wanted to talk about something. Many of you know my children. Sarah, Joel, Nathan, and Joy Clarkson. And 3 of them live in the United Kingdom. 2 of them have their PhDs from schools there. Sarah has her master's from Oxford. And then my son Nathan and his wife Kelia live between California, now hopefully New York City. And they are actors and writers, but all of my children are writers. They're screenwriters, they're book writers, they speak, they do podcasts, they do all sorts of stuff. And so many times I get so many letters and they say, what did you do what curriculum did you use? What did you do to prepare your children to be such strong communicators in the world? And for those of you who know my life, know that I have very strong philosophies about education and discipleship and mentoring and thinking and all those things. It's just so much fun to think all the time. But I do think that I thought I should write about this today because we are people that are unique from all of the other animals because we can speak and use words to influence, to encourage, to show great love, to create great enemies. I mean, words are a power that is something that each and every one of us can and will develop in our lifetime. All of us talk to people. And so I wanted to think through today, what does it look like to develop that wonderful brain? First of all, I just happened to be, it was Father's Day, and one of my sons, Joel, wrote an article for Plow magazine, and I wanted to give you an idea of the kind of thinking and writing my children just do. It's all of them. It just came out naturally. I don't deserve them. I don't know what happened, but I will tell you what I did. This is what he wrote. Father's Day offers the opportunity to reflect on the way the relationships between fathers and their children reveals something of our shared identity as children of God. Human fatherhood gestures to the eternal, ineffable God who has graciously made himself known to us. Our fathers have the capacity to reflect in their lives that divine source of God that grounds us in safety, belonging, and the very experience of being known and loved. In other words, he was basically saying that God is our ultimate father, and that earthly fathers, by copying the attributes of God, will influence their children. And I just thought, I should give you at least a little live example of what writing can be. But I wanted to just talk a little bit more about it, though I will end my talk today with ideas about creativity, inspiration, and all of that. But first I want to tell you a little bit. I always like to give at the very beginning some of the interesting things I've been reading lately. For one thing, I did read this incredible article, which kind of has to do with what we're talking about. And it was called Eating Together Can Improve Children's Self-Esteem. And it talked about the fact that children who actually eat meals with their parents, not with the telephone, not with the television, but actually who eat meals with their parents, are more self-actualized. What does that mean? Self-actualized means knowing who you are, knowing your morals, your ideas, understanding your strengths, your weaknesses, knowing how to go into the world as a confident person. And this article basically said that when children converse at the table, they have to tell what's going on in their life. It just happens naturally. Parents share in their own ideas. Affirmation, friendship, community can take place in a proper sort of friendly table. And it said that children who eat together with their families have stronger moral values. They have stronger emotional values because they feel like they belong to their clan. And all of that from a family table. Now, on the other hand, I read this really interesting article that talked about the fact that children who are thrown in during the junior high and high school years, thrown into the wake of constant peer pressure. What does everybody think of me? What is everybody else wearing? What are they listening to? Are they on TikTok? Are they on Twitter? What are they doing on Instagram? What are they doing in all of the different places on YouTube? And it said that when the less amount of attention and time a child has with their parent, the more they will care about doing what their peers do, to the extent, this article talked about, that children even choose classes that they think are popular, that other kids will be in, which leaves them without a conviction of wanting to do something in their own professional life. In other words, if children are all taking drama and or shop, woodworking, or I'm making this up, whatever it is, if they're all taking some kind of an interesting sort of class, then those who might have been scientists or musicians or physicians or whatever don't have that undergirding and encouragement in the areas where they might have excelled. And this article, it seemed a little bit preposterous to me, but said that in the long run, there are fewer professionals because children want, by peer pressure, to fit in and do what everyone else is doing. And so there's your contrast. Family table, talking, befriending your children, making time with them, taking them out for meals together as a family, compared to children who have little input in their families, but long to be like and to be loved by the people they spend the most time with, which is their peers. So I just thought those were such interesting articles today in light of some of the things that we're talking about. Now, I'm going to be talking to you today about content. How do you form the content of a child's brain? Because the content that is inside through thinking, discussing, debating, through being exposed to stories, through being exposed to all of these different things, is what shapes the content of what becomes the morals and the ethics and the virtue of children, so that they could become good communicators. So in light of that, I thought I should at least pick a couple of really great movies that would feed great content into your children. They're really fun. And the first one is, and I might have mentioned this before, but Chariots of Fire is a great movie to watch with your a little bit older children. I mean, by older, not your kindergarten children, but children who are in school up to an endless amount of age, because it shows the life of a real man who was very talented in his running and in his exercise. And it showed what choices he made under peer pressure in a very difficult time in order to maintain his integrity as a believer and in his faith in God. So it's based on a true story. Actually, there was a story written about what this movie is about the young man who was the runner. And this story was found it was kind of like an Airbnb, a little cabin that a man had rented. He found the story. He happened to be a movie producer. I believe it was Zeffirelli. And he was so captivated by the story that he made it into a movie, Chariots of Fire, which became an award-winning movie. That would be something I think you should watch this summer. And I think everybody, if you never have, should watch the Anne of Green Gables and Anne of Avonlea. It's pictures of imagination, and there's lots of character choices. It's humorous, it's fun, it's engaging. And so if you lack some movies to watch this summer, be sure to include Chariots of Fire and Anne of Green Gables and then Anne of Avonlea. And one more thing I want to tell you about, and it's actually in the picture today that goes along with this podcast. Many of you know that I have read hundreds of books to my children, and I just love to expose them to all sorts of people. Well, I was reminded recently of a great artist who, the reason I really love her so much is because in her time she painted. And it's kind of like we're left with the photography. She painted, obviously, in watercolor and I think even sometimes, occasionally, in oils. But the wonderful thing was that we have a history of some of the values that children had. They're very natural pictures, and they're beautiful pictures out of a different time in history, all of children. And so I wanted to tell you today just the tiniest little bit about Jessie Wilcox Smith. And she was an American illustrator during the golden age of American illustration. She lived from 1863 to 1935. So she was kind of the quintessential Victorian illustrator at the time when, in publishing, all of these beautiful classical books were coming out about children. It was the time when children's books began to be very popular. And so you have these great books like Little Lord Fauntleroy, Heidi, all just so many different classic books that you've heard of. And she also illustrated the Children's Garden of Verses. She has these incredibly soft and beautiful and touching and warm pictures that I think that you and your children would love to go through. But she used her talent and her skills to bring about the kind of content that we can see where innocence and goodness and fun and pleasure was abounding in the lives of children. So I wanted to read to you today, as we're talking about just really how do you create a good writer. I want to read you a couple of different things that I've been thinking about, different little articles that I've read. But this is a quotation from Benjamin Disraeli that I really love. Benjamin Disraeli said, "Nurture your mind with great thoughts, for you will never go any higher than what you think." Now think about that. Nurture your mind with great thoughts, for you will never go any higher than you think. And when I answer the question of how did my children become such great writers, I don't know how it happened, but all four of them entered into this very organic lifestyle that we had. But one of the most distinguishing attributes of human beings that we would all agree on is that we have the ability to communicate with words. And we were created to be message makers, to use words powerfully, to adequately give great value to what is true and matters in life and brings glory to God. In the same way, though, as I look back on our lives, in the same way that strong health comes from eating organic fruit and vegetables without pesticides, drinking lots of water, consuming what is healthy. And so similarly, a strong brain comes from ingesting what is the best, whatever is true, honest, just, pure, lovely, ingesting truth, great thoughts, and then exercising our brains, just like exercise is so important to our bodies being healthy. We exercise the muscles of our brain by discussing these thoughts and ideas, by connecting the synapses inside the brain to each other, one thought to another, pathways to pathways, so that we become stronger in the mental muscle of our brains by discussing, thinking, reading, acting out, debating, and cherishing. Great thoughts become good messages from discussing and integrating many true thoughts. And those thoughts are what form character, an understanding of what is virtuous and good and right and true. And then the strength of character comes from acting on and practicing these great thoughts that have infiltrated all the parts of our brains. So our messages, my friends, come from what we have cherished in our hearts and stored in our minds, or valued, the things we value in our souls. And so if we are constantly confronted with chaos and secularism and immorality and violence and all of those things that come in the news, then our brains and our messages will reflect that darkness. And we reflect what we have cherished in our hearts. That's why the writing that my children do now, the great thoughts, the poignant encouragement, comes because I made it a goal to do what Philippians says, whatever is true, honest, just, right, pure, lovely. If there is any virtue, if there is any praise, think on these things. So I would gather great stories, good books, good movies. I would tell good stories. We would we would have people around our dinner table and discuss excellent ideas. And so my children's basic food for thought was healthy and strong and good. And so the student becomes like his teacher, Jesus says. So you have to be growing in excellence intellectually. You have to be communicating profoundly, leading your students in rigorous discussion about the ideas that you yourself have passed through. The natural consequence will be that you will be shaping a strong communicator. Now, I think it's so important for us to understand that we pass on what we are. And I actually loved being involved in the educational process of my children, because I felt like I could I learned so many things. I grew stronger. I became more intellectual. I became a better writer. And so the imagination grows in the life of a child, the imagination for story, for history, for what it looks like to make good decisions, for consequences for decisions. It grows as it connects all of the thoughts and ideas. And then a communicator, a writer, a passionate person is born. Now, we need to all be stewards of our minds and our messages and our hearts, because, for one thing, that's who Jesus came as, the Word, the message from God. He was the literal, in the flesh messenger from God, with his words, with his character, with his deeds. And so what becomes a message maker is somebody who is mentored and encouraged and affirmed. And so we hardly ever, I think, if ever, used any curriculum. But we would talk and we would read and we would think, and then I would say, go write what your thoughts about this, or put together a little speech for Daddy tonight about what we've learned today, or who do you think were the real heroes? What do you think was wrong with the decision that person made? Asking good questions and being truly interested, not lecturing, but engaging is what really matters. And so I want to read you another, just a little bit of something that I put together on inspiration, because I thought this might be fun for some of you as you're thinking through some of the ways to shape and form the discussions in your own family. This is what my daughter Sarah wrote in one of her books called Read for the Heart, that is actually out of print right now. We hope to be putting it back in print sometime. But she said, growing up, my siblings and I were almost constantly in the throes of some imagined story. Shipwrecked travelers, desperate orphans, disguised royalty, westward pioneers. After our obligatory hour of reading, because I always had my children read for an hour in the afternoon, I bribed them. I gave them cookies and a cup of tea, but they would go in their rooms and read from a stack of books that I had given to them. She says, after our hour of reading, our afternoons were often spent outdoors in worlds available only to us through the creative power of our minds, worlds often introduced through the stories we had read. In the past few years, I have come to the conclusion that those hours of imagination after the whole day of talking, reading, being together gave me far more than just good memories. As I begun writing my own first books and done a bit of speaking all over the United States, numerous people have asked me what gave me the ability to dream, what drove my desires and shaped my goals. How did my brother become a composer, my other brother a writer? All of us have been published writers. What was the secret to our upbringing? The answer is simple: God, family, and imagination. Imagination is too often described as a childish thing, attributed only to the young, the very creative, or the artsy and impractical. But in reality, imagination is a transformative force that is common to all people who dream deeply enough to accomplish something of worth in their lives. At its core, imagination is the ability to envision the future we desire, the force enabling us to pursue a dream whose reality is radically different from the present. We cannot set out on a road of great hopes and determination if we have no concept of what it is that we are journeying toward. Imagination drives inspired action. When my children were younger, we did have that hour of quiet every afternoon. They each had their own basket of books that I put together and a treat of some kind. This was an hour that I appreciated. I needed an hour to myself. And moms need a break from the go, go, go of mothering. So this hour also blessed my children and I think created a great deal of education in their hearts. I would put together a basket that would have one book about history, one book of science and nature, one book about a Christian hero, a fiction of their choice, a fiction of my choice, and they would go through those books. And when they had read them all, I would always have some kind of a reward. I'd go to the dollar store and get a basket full of things from the dollar store that were just kind of fun. And these books helped stir my children's imaginations. They could be bold heroes or delicate princesses. Every era of history could be acted out. One of our favorites was Roxaboxen, which literally in our family directed hours of pretend because they would go up on the hill behind our house or in the yard, wherever we were living, and they would pretend to build their own city, have their own money out of rocks. And it's a sweet book about playing outdoors and creating your own town. Oftentimes I would go to Goodwill and garage sales, and I would choose old clothes, and I put together a cape for each child, a very simple cape, hand-sewn capes, and it became a wardrobe for my budding actors and actresses. They made props out of anything and everything if they decided to carry it to a point of drama. Sometimes they just played and pretended. But our children are creative. If they're given the opportunity. If they have been given a solid diet of television and video games, they might struggle a bit with using their minds to amuse themselves. Our culture encourages conformity, not individuality. Our Creator God gave us minds that can imagine and can be individual and unique according to what we were made to be, our own unique DNA, personality, fingerprints. Schedule time this week for your own children, even for you as an adult, to play, to do something creative, to build a garden, to do a new recipe, to read a great book that inspires you to be able to make it through this time in your life. I wanted to recommend just a couple of them that are kind of beyond the ordinary ones we do because they're really just fun books that might create some humor this summer. Mr. Popper's Penguins by Richard Altwater. Caddy Woodlawn by Carol Ryle Brink. A Little Maid series by Alice Turner Curtis. And The 21 Balloons by William Penn Du Bois. Now, these are books that make wonderful read-alouds. These are not necessarily the biographies I would suggest. They're fun books for the summer. But they can also be given to middle grade students to read as well. But I just want to ask you, what books are you reading this summer? What ways are you developing a picnic where you have discussions, or a museum to go to where you might hear about someone, or listen to the story of a great composer and imagine how they came up with the music that inspired kings and queens? Whatever it is, be a steward of the brain, be a steward of your conversations, be a steward. And many of you I know have just little ones, little babies. Talk to them, hold them, look in their eyes and say, you have the most beautiful blue eyes. They remind me of blueberries. That's what I said to my children. And I told Joy that she had chocolate, the beauty of chocolate chips in her little eyes. And I would talk to them and say, this is a finger. You will grasp many things with these fingers, and you will also use these fingers. And I would pat her and I would say, to give love to many people. The more you talk, the more you converse, the more you just use life as a time to listen to the amazing stories and ideas and preponderances that we can have, the more creative your children will be. And the more you have that habit of communicating or saying, let's write about this and read each other's essays, then could you just share a few thoughts today with some of the people at our table about what you've been learning this week? The more you practice the mental muscle of accessing knowledge and words, the greater, the more natural a child, any adult, will be at becoming a great message maker, a communicator. So make it your goal this summer to give messages of beauty and goodness and affirmation and inspiration to those around you. I'm just so glad that you joined me here, and I just do want to pray for you. There have been many people in my life this week who have been going through disasters, difficulties, tragedies, and I know that for the people that I know in my life who are experiencing this, there are many of you who are experiencing this as well. And actually, by having rhythms of reading, of listening to my audiobooks, of watching a great movie, my own brain has been drawn out of darkness that comes at times into light and beauty. So I'm praying that'll be true for you too. But let me pray for each one of you. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for every person who joined me here today. I thank you that they each have a unique story to live, to tell with their decisions, their lives, their overcoming evil with good, their learning to love well, learning to access interesting ideas and knowledge that you have given for them to access. Bless these precious ones, Lord, that they can know that they have the capacity to grow, to develop, to access more knowledge and more skills, and help them to have that vision as well as to pass that vision on to those in their lives, their children, their husband, their friends. I pray that you will raise up a generation of children who can communicate and write about truth and beauty and virtue, and that we will have become those who encourage and inspire and water the seeds of great thoughts in the lives of our children and of our family. Lord, for those who feel hopeless right now, let them know that you are the God. As I look back on my own life, see that every difficulty passed and you were faithful, and other difficulties came, but you were always there, and that really to carry these burdens is not what you meant for us to do. You want to carry them for us. So be with all my sweet friends, Lord, who are carrying difficulties, are in mysterious times with family or friends or children, or in times when they are ill, times when there are difficult consequences in their lives, and cause them to know that you, the person who is called the message, the word, are the one who wants to encourage them this week, that you will be with them, that you are watching over them. Give them peace and grace in their lives today, I pray. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, my friends. Well, I finally, after all of these podcasts lately, I have recorded it way before I have to make dinner tonight. So I think I will go out on my front porch with my children, Nathan and Kelia, who are visiting with Clay, and we will have a cup of tea and a great and rousing conversation of some sort, accompanied by, this week, chocolate chip oatmeal cookies. Have a great week, and thank you so much for coming and listening. Share it with your friends, I pray. And for those of you who don't know about it or haven't been able to yet, it's such a meaningful, encouraging thing for our family when you join my membership at Life with Sally, where we have lots more resources, recipes, great books, ideas, and lots of podcasts that you can't find anywhere else. Have a great week. Bye-bye. I hope you've enjoyed our time together today and that you'll join me next week. Be sure to look for more inspiration on my blog at sallyclarkson.com. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.